remember growing up and hearing that phrase, time heals all wounds. Time heals all wounds. And I believed it. It seemed like good wisdom. But I'd like to add something to the end of that phrase. Time heals all wounds, but not necessarily correctly. Time heals all wounds, but not necessarily correctly. I may get a simple cut on my arm, and I am of decent health. And even if there's a slight infection, I can just use some soap and water, and eventually it heals up. And there might be a bit of a scar, but nothing terribly out of the ordinary. And that phrase, "time heals all wounds," would stand true. Let's say I broke my arm to the point that it was sort of facing this way, perpendicular to the rest of my arm. And I didn't take it to the doctor. It would heal. Eventually, somehow the bones would sort of fuse together, or something would happen. But because the doctor didn't set it right, it wouldn't necessarily heal correctly. And I would most likely lose the function of this arm. We've seen people who have healed, but maybe haven't healed correctly. And this is just with physical brokenness. We can also say the same is true for spiritual brokenness. Time heals all wounds, but it doesn't necessarily heal them correctly. How many people do we know who have suffered a moral injury and have driven themselves far from the Lord and the church out of bitterness? And they say, "Yeah, that thing happened in the past. It's over. I'm healed. I've moved on." Time heals all wounds, but not necessarily correctly. I want to commend you this morning for attending this first of a series of sermons dealing with pain. Dealing with the pain that we experience here on earth. It takes a brave soul to acknowledge pain. And even greater courage to do something to make that pain heal correctly. I think of the image of a child who's locked himself in the room, absolutely angry with his father for coming down and giving a command that the child doesn't want to obey. And just absolutely angry and sobbing in that locked bedroom. But at some point, the child gets some courage as he hears the father outside the door saying, "When you're ready, I'll be out here waiting for you." And after the sobbing stops, the child eventually opens the door, sees the father with arms open, ready to hug the child. We're praying a lot about this sermon series, thinking about this election year that we're in. And this week is no different than some of the other stuff we've seen in the previous weeks. As a nation, as a whole, whatever is reported there on the news They have this adage that if it bleeds, it leads. And so they picked some of the most horrific stories. There's a lot of great things happening in this world, a lot of great acts of kindness. We hear about police officers and firefighters who are performing heroic deeds and pulling people out of burning cars. And we hear about community members that are standing up and doing the right thing. Yet last night we had 2 bombs go off in New York City. An act of terror. It may not be terrorism in its truest definition, but it certainly terrorized the people of NYC who were around those bombs. Or this, I don't even know what to call it, to add an adjective to put in front of it, with the quarterback who refuses to salute during the Star-Spangled Banner. But I can say that somebody summed it up very well when they said, if I support the quarterback, I'm unpatriotic. If I choose to berate the quarterback, I'm a racist. And thus, we sense this catch-22 that our nation is in that very statement, caught up in this very act. The pain that we feel, and we find again that the news is focusing on one person to make it all better, to bring it all to closure, to bring us to unity with your foreign policy, with your role of commander-in-chief. One person, make it better, take away the pain, give me a job. The brave and the wise, they open their hands slowly to the Lord. The brave and the wise don't say to a political official, make it all better. The brave and the wise go to the commander-in-chief of the universe and say, help, please. This story that we read, this historical account, has a lot of emotion behind it, as death and grieving often do. And I love it because it helps us in our time of pain. There was a point when the Twin Towers had fallen, and many in the nation were asking, where was God? Where was God? God is a God of intervention. This whole Bible that we read is about a God who intervenes. Jesus Christ is God's intervention into our lives, helping us turn it around through faith in Him. Time and again we hear how God has intervened in the lives of people, rescued them, saved them. And how people have bowed down to Him and served Him as Lord. Anyone who has been personally cut by a painful experience in life, I believe, comes to a point and asks that question that was asked to those people, asked during that time of 9/11, where was God? I mean, indeed, look at Adam and Eve. Why couldn't have God just sort of made that fruit not look good? Or maybe He could have just put duct tape over their mouth so they wouldn't even then eat it. Well, God could have intervened in a number of ways. I mean, we're all creative people, and God's a whole lot more creative than we are. We can come up with several ways of how it could have gone down, and we could not be in this sinful world. So you look at your painful experience, you say, God, it could have gone down so differently. Where were you? we see Mary and Martha asking Jesus the same question. Lord, if you had been here, my loved one would not have died. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. My colleague would not have died. My friend would not have died. Whatever the tragedy would have been, I would not have been hurt by that person. I would not have had that traumatic experience. Lord, if you had been here. We're reminded in this story that God is there. That God is there. Jesus wept. Where was God when the towers fell? He was inside there, holding the hearts and souls of the people perishing, weeping alongside them. Where was he with each American who wept at the tragedy? Beside each one of us, weeping